position, it became an abstraction and it became something else. And that's the kind of thing that always fascinated me about those. I would put a black lemon or a black eggs in there, and I could pretty much do what I wanted with those still lifes. And yet they were still each fruit had the kind of a volume and weight as if you were really looking at sculpture, but it was on a painting, and it had the weight of a visual weight of a heavy sculpture. So that's the kind of thing when you come up against a blank canvas, you have to decide what you're going to do. And they say some of the hardest things to do when you're painting is to get what I think Stella said is to get the paint from the can to the canvas. And that's an ideological movement, everything you do.
I know Anish Kapoor has purchased the rights to Vanta Black. I can only imagine how you would use black, so black that it almost has the optical illusion of being a void. Where does this love of soot and black, is it a visceral compulsion for you? Because, I mean, it seems like you love the weight of black.
Yeah, I don't really care about that color black that he has. I can achieve what I want with what's available. I don't need some special thing. I've never used it or seen it, but the black lemon etchings that I made that were shown in the modern in the 80s, those do the same function. I thought of those as socks in the eye, and they really do hit you in the eye, and they're both a void and a heavy presence. They did both of that, and that was a black ink. It did what I needed it to do. It didn't need to be blacker. I'm sure it would have been nice to see it that way. I have no idea how that would have affected anything. I think this would have been the same, the same effect. I can't imagine. I guess the idea, if you can paint things so black, you could, put it on yourself and be invisible. But I don't know. I've never seen it. I've never seen anybody use it, so I don't know. I've never seen him use it.
Yeah, the most interesting example I've seen of it is actually applying it to a sculpture. In this 3D form looks like a silhouette, and as you walk around that 3D form, it looks like the silhouette is animated because from whatever angle it always looks flat. That's intriguing to me.
Yeah, I've never seen it, so I'm just take your word for it. I have a lot of black sculptures that work like that.
So tell me about your printmaking. Your body of work includes sculpture. We can call them paintings, but they're really creations. They're objects. They're almost like reliefs because they're coming off the walls. But tell me about your printmaking. I know that you have been using a process on copper plates that's a little bit different than some folks that do printmaking. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your process there?
Well, the first time, I haven't done etchings for a long time, but the first ones I did with the were I guess the first ones I did were small tulips, and they were done as a little series. I decided that I had been drawing tulips with charcoal, like I ended up with the black lemons too. And because I wanted to make natural looking things like tulips become compression and sooty, made like they were made with soot from a factory. And then the lemons I did because they were taking charcoal or something and compressing it so densely that it had that weight and void at the same time. At the same time, I was trying to break down the edges. So when I went large with those, I used roofing copper, which is slightly softer, and it's not as polished, so it has a tooth on the naked copper. So when you ink it, you're going to have a kind of a ground that will, no matter how much you wipe it, you're going to have a slight ground to it. So it's not just white. And then I did something which I believe has never been done before. I used the aquatint as powder. Most people, when you do aquatint, you melt it and then you stop out to do certain things, and you work with it melted on the plate. You draw on it in different versions of acids and so on. But these I did, the whole plate was dusted like soot, and I took paintbrushes and I cleaned off around the lemon so that the edge was not hard. It was drawn sort of in reverse, and then I melted it where the black was going to be. And that, by doing that, you had some of the brushed rosin stick into the imperfections of the copper. So when we etched it in the acids, you came up with almost this black, uh, not quite, almost like you see the big images of the sun. You have a kind of gas coming off the edge. They're not hard edges. And it almost looks like a cave painting. And I did that because the etchings to me were again, industrial. It was materials used for buildings. Now I've been using serigraphs, and which I like as well because that's what you print with. You know, you print broadsheets. You can print. When I did lino cuts in France, you know, the guy was also made, you know, theater tickets and posters and stuff. It's just an industrial machine. And I think of the beauty of prints is that ideally you should make a print that you can make as many as you want in an edition, and they'll all be the same. I like that. I don't believe in doing mono prints or things like that. I like the fact that printmaking, whatever you do, is something that you should be able to do. A printer should be able to do over and over again. So again, it's all part of the idea of, you know, mass production, even though they're limited editions. I love that fact about printmaking, and you know, thinking of Toulouse-Lautrec and lithography. You know, all those posters. Once he did the first ones, they could make many of those posters, but they're still art. I think that's great. You know, so that's where that all comes from. I do a lot of printing now, woodblock too, especially the Japanese woodblocking. To me, that's like the lemons in a way. That's a kind of washes of color that are soft, and very few people can do those printing. It'd be the printers that do that. And mostly the Japanese can do that. That's a special kind of printing. And I really love that, but it's very rare to find somebody to do it. And I haven't made very many of those. I've made most of them at Tyler Graphics. And then I had a printer for years who could do them with me. And they're just beautiful, like the drawings, like watercolors. They look like watercolors. And, you know, it's on wood, but it's magnificent techniques. I find it just as interesting as painting, and a lot of the paintings I do are kind of like the prints I do.
Well, sure. I mean, you're dealing with again issues of reproduction in series, and it sounds like even within your printing process, you're attracted to maybe less pristine precision and more pushing the bounds of that medium in a way that really kind of appreciates and gravitates towards texture and imperfection.
Yeah, I started using flocking for in paintings and prints, and I really loved the fact that we could do flocking, black flocking, and then we could print over it, and you had the same feel of tar. So in the prints, I can have the same weight that you find on the paintings. And so I used flocking a lot. Now, some other people have started using it too for printing. But it's funny because you know, originally flocking was designed to imitate what they called what's it called?
Like velvet, or
well, it's how they made patterns of deco with velvet, where they would iron a pattern into the velvet, and you had you know, a wallpaper, and you had furniture that, you know, you can't vacuum it ever, even though it's made in the 30s, because it'll disturb the pattern, but it's permanent. So it was meant to imitate velvet, just as linoleum was meant originally to imitate marble. And I liked using those things, you know. I never went to AstroTurf, but I suppose it's possible. But I like the ideas of these things. Flocking is, I think the first time I ever really got involved with flocking was when I would come up to New York. I'm sure it existed in other places, but I'd come to New York. There was a thing called Tad's Steakhouse, which I thought was the height of great food. It was like a fast food steak place, and they did the walls were made like the old Western hotels, that had that kind of red velvety looking wallpaper with patterns in it. I had used it for paintings I made of fuzzy dice that were hanging, more or less looked like they were hanging on the painting. And so I needed something to make the fuzz. And I came up with flocking. So I had kind of hairy, fuzzy dice. And then from there on, it went all over the place. I started using it a lot because it's beautiful color. There's very beautiful colors. And they're specific to the flocking. They manufactured, and we're using it a lot in printing.
So hearing you talk about the fuzzy dice reminds me of just how much your work deals with the solid versus the void, negative shapes, negative space. There's been a whole body of your work that involves circles that, are kind of applied to the surface, then use all of the value and then peel back up this pristine circle, whether that's in the form of dice or dominoes or even berries on a branch.
Yeah.
Can you tell us kind of what attracts you to that and how you use that?
Well, the idea that I've been working with now with that are called Mimosa paintings and drawings, and they're based on the little yellow mimosas you find in the south of France, and they grow in the mountains. And been working with that for a while. But what I love about it is it's kind of like having the hand, and the machine working together. I mean, they could easily be wires, electrical wires that have those circles on them to define between the negative and the positives, or they separate wires one from another so they don't touch. Like a tangle of those with those kind of little berries on them, But it's meant to be more or less a sort of a manufactured naturalism. And I really like doing it because it's surprising to me when I do it. Every one of them is surprising. And I always want to be surprised. When I'm working on a painting, I like to feel that as I approach the painting, it begins to loom over me, whatever size it is. But the approach of a painting should have a feeling that you're approaching a sculpture or an architect. It has to loom over you or give you the feeling of its power when you approach it. So I work on these things, and in various ways, it has that qualities. The first ones I did, I was trying to recreate the drawings I had, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. So I had been using the little sticker dots on the drawings, and then using charcoal. So I started working with the tar and the circles, and then I kept adding more and more, and then paint and this and that. And the first one I did, which is now at the Fort Worth Museum, they got it, and it's really, got a lot of layers of handwork over these machine dots, which are kind of like taking something that precious and shooting it full of holes. But anyhow, somebody looked at it and they said, "Well, how did you come up with that?" And I said, "Well, I have a philosophy that you can't fail if you don't know what you're doing. It's only when you know exactly what you're going to make that you can fail, because it becomes just a shtick. It just becomes something you can knock off, and it's very easy for people to relax when they're painting. Once they know what they're doing, you can just keep making them in various forms. But I kind of like the idea of each group being different and surprising to me. And even if I know at the end, I think, well, maybe that was 2 years of pursuing something that may not be really that great. I don't know if that's going to be the case in 20 years. They might look back at those things and think they're even better than the other things. You never know. But after a while, I evolved them into something else because I don't want to make them anymore. And these are what I'm in the middle of doing now. And I'm just in the verge right now of changing that again for this group of paintings. So I love that idea of constantly surprising myself. It's like meeting a new person that you like. And then there's times you meet people and you think, ugh.
Right.
That's what a painting is. To me, it's a living